Okay, listeners. So thanks for sending this stack of sources over. We've got articles, some notes, research, quite a bit here.
Yeah, and it all focuses on one particular account of a really, well, explosive moment in political talk.
Right, not just any debate. The sources are detailing a specific clash during a live TV appearance. Atlanta, Georgia, they say.
That's it. And the core of this material, it's this debate between Kash Patel, he's identified here as, an FBI director figure in the Trump administration,
All right.
and Representative Jasmine Crockett, described as a progressive Democrat, Texas, House Judiciary Committee, former civil rights attorney. Quite the lineup.
Definitely. So our mission, listener, for this deep dive is to really get into what these specific sources present. We're going to walk through their play-by-play, pull out the key details they highlight, trying to figure out why they say it unfolded this way,
Right.
and see what lessons, about prep, evidence, public debate that these particular sources are drawing from it all.
And they really set the scene, don't they? Before it even started, you get this sense of anticipation in the studio.
Yeah, divided audience, you can picture it.
Totally. And the descriptions of the two, Patel, they say, was seasoned, calm, powerful presence, sharp suit,
Tailored suit, yeah.
while Crockett, representing sort of the newer generation lawmaker, described as confident, sharp legal mind, uncompromising, also suited up.
Neatly pressed suit, the notes say.
Yeah.
And the initial setup, according to these sources, was basically both came out swinging,
Oh, yeah. Crockett apparently went right after Patel's national security qualifications.
using terms like Trump's lackey.
Clueless, empty rhetoric. Someone focused on, quote, social media instead of real security issues. Pretty direct.
And Patel's counter, as described here.
Just as direct, it seems. He labeled her a rookie congresswoman, threw the social media focus back at her, said she was more interested in that than the, quote, realities of national security, and positioned her as part of Democrats' failed policies weakening security and borders.
Okay, so right away, lines drawn. But here's the kicker, right? What these sources really zero in on.
Yeah, this is the interesting part they highlight.
They claim Crockett just didn't seem to see it coming. That Patel had actually brought documents, physical documents.
Right. Stuff they allege could, quote, completely flip her narrative.
Okay, so let's dig into that opening clash, the initial back and forth, and what these sources say the stakes were. Crockett's first move.
Well, the material says it was pretty pointed. Accusations flying about abusing the FBI, protecting Trump, billionaires, hyping Trump on Truth Social, criticizing the current administration, but going after dissenters.
And that quote they pulled.
Yeah. He's all empty rhetoric, no substance, typical of someone who's never faced real security issues. Ouch.
And the sources add context, right? Her background, her reputation is sharp, unafraid to take on Trump allies, sort of setting the stage.
Exactly. They frame it like this is what you'd expect from her. So how did Patel respond to that initial volley, according to the sources?
Well, this account says he didn't really hesitate. Immediately blamed, quote, Democrats' failed policies, and people like Crockett specifically.
For what exactly?
For threats, for borders being a, quote, gateway for crime.
Hitting the border issue hard.
Yeah, and his quote back at her was something like, Representative Crockett is the perfect example, a rookie congresswoman who spends more time on social media than understanding the realities of national security. She criticizes the FBI, but has never faced the decisions needed to protect this country from real threats.
And the sources bring up his background too, right? Pentagon, FBI.
Loyal Trump ally, commentator, yeah. Seen as controversial by some, according to this.
So you can almost feel that tension they described. The audience split right down the middle.
Absolutely. And the way these sources frame it, it wasn't just policy talk.
No, they call it a battle over credibility, authenticity, and who truly grasp the responsibility of protecting national security. Much bigger stakes.
So the host then turns to Patel, gives him the floor to respond to the qualifications challenge.
Yeah, that's the sequence described.
And his response. Still calm, they said?
Apparently, yeah. Calm exterior, but the response was sharp. Started with a bit of sarcasm towards her unique perspectives, her focus on social media posts over, tackling real national security issues.
And then this challenge.
Right, the direct quote here is, when have you been briefed on a Tier 1 security threat? Have you ever made a decision involving classified intelligence that affects American lives? Throwing down the gauntlet, basically.
Yeah, and he kept going, the sources say. arguing the administration, people like Crockett, had weakened our global standing.
Yep, leading to, quote, open borders, rising crime, and emboldened adversaries.
And that point got a reaction from the crowd.
Apparently strong support from the conservatives in the audience, yeah. The sources noted that.
So then Crockett starts her counterattack.
Asserting Congress's role, constitutional duty, oversight of security, immigration.
Bringing in her civil rights background.
Yeah, linking that experience to national security, individual liberties. Making her case.
But Patel cuts her off.
Reportedly, yeah. With that sarcastic line. Pretty words, no substance, political theater.
And the audience reaction to that?
Mixed, the sources say. Some liked it, some didn't, clearly.
Okay, so then comes this pivot the sources describe. Crockett changes tack.
Exactly. She reportedly suggests, hey, let's talk about your record, Mr. Patel, hinting at serious concerns about his conduct.
And that got a reaction from him.
The sources describe his smile faltering, just slightly.
But he didn't miss a beat, right? Counter-pivoted immediately.
Instantly, according to these reports. He asks her, basically, are you familiar with the FBI's own internal report?
The one about rising crime rates?
Yes, specifically tied to immigration, and specifically in Texas. Her state.
And her response was evasive.
The sources quote her trying to deflect. You'll need to be more specific.
And boom, this is where the documents come out, according to this material.
This is it. Patel signals, apparently, and up on the screen pops what's presented as an official FBI report.
Wow.
And he doesn't just wave it around. He cites page 32, paragraph 4, super specific.
And what did that page say, according to him?
It noted, quote, a 25% increase in crimes related to illegal immigration in Texas under policies you've supported in the House, pointing the finger directly at her.
How did the room react to that?
Studio silence is how the sources describe it. And they say Crockett's confidence visibly wavered.
Did she try to push back?
Yeah, reportedly countered that the report lacks context. It's disputed, trying to undermine it.
But Patel apparently had more.
Oh, yeah. This account says he then pulled out a second document, an updated DHS report, supposedly.
And this one?
Confirmed the FBI numbers, according to Patel in this account, and explicitly stated policies Crockett voted for directly contributed to this rise.
Oof. The tension must have ramped up even more.
For sure. The sources talk about a real shift in momentum in the audience. Crockett's quoted calling it political theater, a political hit job, baseless accusations.
Trying to regain control. Did she defend her position?
Yeah, reportedly said Democrats do support border security, just in a humane way.
And Patel's come back.
Calm, apparently, just challenged her, like, well, if FBI data is theater, what's your evidence?
And then document number 3.
Document number 3. This one, described as a Democratic campaign email.
About what?
Discussing cuts to Border Patrol funding, specifically to, quote, reallocate for other priorities.
And the audience reaction to that one?
Erupted, the sources say, just erupted.
So the host jumps in, asks Crockett about a vote.
Yeah, citing a House Judiciary Committee transcript, her quote was apparently, I've always supported humane and secure border policies.
But Patel saw an opening there.
Immediately, according to the sources, pointed out what he framed as a direct contradiction. Saying she supports secure policies, but the FBI report links policies she supported to, quote, 3 waves of increased immigration-related crime.
Okay, this is intense. And Patel wasn't done.
Not yet. He then presented what the sources called the most interesting part, focusing on what allegedly happened after those FBI crime figures came out.
What was that? More documents?
Emails, apparently shown on screen, some names blacked out, but the sources say they indicated Crockett, quote, attempted to pressure for reduced funding for Border Patrol programs after the FBI report was released.
Whoa, so connecting her actions directly to the report's timing.
That's the implication presented. Murmurs in the audience, the host looked surprised, according to the notes.
How did Crockett react to the emails?
Agitated, the sources say, called them completely fabricated.
Their explanation.
Claimed any budget talk was for humanitarian reasons, totally unrelated to the report.
And then came the affidavit.
Patel reveals this document, attributes it to a Sarah Mitchell,
who they identify as
a former policy advisor on the Judiciary Committee, so someone potentially in the know.
And the affidavit contained a quote attributed to Crockett.
A very specific quote, allegedly from Crockett. We need to cut funding for programs that only serve Medjie politics.
And the timing of this alleged quote.
Reportedly, just 3 days after the FBI report came out, that timing detail is emphasized in the sources.
The studio reaction to that.
Complete silence is the description. Even Crockett supporters went quiet, seemed uncomfortable.
So her composure, gone.
Appeared to fully crumble at this point, based on the description. She reportedly called it character assassination, claimed the documents were selectively edited.
Did Patel respond to the edited claim?
Firm denial, according to the sources, quoted as saying, "They're not edited, these are official records and they tell a very different story," standing by the documents.
And then he addressed the audience directly.
Yeah, the sources detail him turning to the audience. Said he wasn't trying to score points, but that national security is too important for, quote, hypocrisy.
Circling back to her first attack on him.
Exactly. He reportedly questioned her criticism of his qualifications when, according to these documents he presented, her own record allegedly shows she contributed to weakening border security.
And the audience reaction to that summary.
An eruption of applause, described as coming from across the room. The sources interpret this as the audience recognizing, quote, authenticity piercing through political theater.
Did the host give Crockett one last chance?
Yes. The sources say the host offered her a chance to adjust everything directly.
And her response? Still defensive?
Evasive is how this account puts it. Talked about issues being complex and nuanced, not reducible to sound bites, requiring a balance that outsiders might not fully understand, kind of trying to rise above it, maybe?
How did that land with the audience?
Snickers, apparently. The sources note that and say Patel saw it as his opening for a final word.
What was his final statement?
He agreed national security is complex, according to the sources, but then demanded honesty, transparency, and accountability.
And the final line, the big closer.
The quote is, "So, when you question my qualifications to discuss these issues, perhaps you should ask yourself whether someone who supports policies that weaken border security should be the first to throw stones."
Wow. And the reaction to that?
Explosion of applause, the sources say.
Yeah.
People standing up, cameras capturing it all. The big climactic moment, as described here.
So the immediate aftermath. How did the sources describe Crockett?
Motionless, confidence gone, just outmaneuvered is the picture painted. She apparently made one last attempt, calling it a political stunt, mentioned her work for humane policies.
That at a last gasp.
Seems like it. Patel's final reply, according to this, was it wasn't personal, it was about the principle. National security over partisan politics.
And he'd keep asking questions.
Because it's what the American people expect, and the applause continued. The sources note.
And then the viral storm started.
Immediately, according to these accounts. Studio buzzing, people posting clips online, went viral fast.
Kash Patel takedown was trending.
Yeah, that's mentioned. Clips everywhere, especially that campaign email one. And the reactions quoted are things like, Kash Patel just obliterated Jasmine Crockett.
And the how it started, how it ended meme format.
That too, yeah. Capturing the perceived shift.
What about the political fallout described in the sources?
Well, Democratic accounts reportedly tried damage control. But interestingly, some left-leaning viewers quoted admitted she was just, well, outmatched.
And that commentator quote.
The Democratic commentator saying, Crockett dug her own grave, never underestimate your opponent, basic strategy. Pretty blunt assessment cited there.
And the media coverage followed this narrative.
Mostly, yeah. Headlines cited are like, Patel's evidence overwhelms Crockett, Patel's experience leaves Jasmine Crockett flustered, Crockett faces backlash, Crockett caught off guard.
He even mentions MSNBC tried to downplay it.
Yeah, the sources note that as a counterpoint, but the dominant narrative presented was Patel winning decisively based on evidence.
Did the sources suggest longer-term impacts?
Definitely. They talk about Magier's strategist maybe seeing Patel in a new light, his potential boosted.
In it for Crockett.
Democratic activists debating how to rehab her image. Advice cited included focusing elsewhere, avoiding live debates, unless really, really prepped with a team.
So it became more than just a debate clip.
Yeah, the sources call it a political culture phenomenon, a cultural touchstone.
And that phrase, bring the receipts.
Became shorthand, they say, for being ready with data, being prepared. Memes popped up.
So the big lesson these sources hammer home is
preparation, basically. They argue this whole thing tapped into this fundamental satisfaction people get seeing preparation beat bluster.
Substance over style.
Exactly. They emphasize it wasn't flashy talk or insults that changed things, but the evidence.
Right.
Presented clearly, confidently.
And they even connected to everyday life.
Yeah. Workplaces, meetings. People apparently started saying things like, don't pull a Crockett or bring Patel energy.
Wow.
So, as presented here, it became a reminder of what informed, evidence-based debate could look like, according to these sources. accountable to facts.
And they keep coming back to that core contrast.
Right. Patel, with his folder, his reports, his emails, reportedly overwhelming Crockett, who, in this telling, faltered because she wasn't ready for that level of specific data.
Citing again that alleged 25% crime rise stat, the email, the affidavit.
Those specific pieces of evidence are repeatedly highlighted as the turning points.
So the absolute key takeaway from this body of source material is
prepare thoroughly. Rely on verified data, not just style or emotion. That's the message.
And that in American culture, transparency, accountability, they're valued.
Yeah, and that bringing the receipts, like Patel reportedly did here with FOIA documents and internal reports, is seen as crucial for credibility.
Any final reflections from the sources?
Just that Patel apparently used the momentum to push his agenda: border security, law enforcement, America first.
Senator Crockett.
The sources claim the confrontation continued to dog her career, the clip resurfacing when she'd make bold statements later. Its legacy in this narrative is purely about the power of truth backed by evidence.
Okay, so listener, let's bring it all back home. Looking at this stack you sent, this deep dive we just did, based purely on this specific account, the narrative is clear.
Yeah.
The win wasn't about personality. It was about prep. It was about facts. It was, as they put it, literally bringing the receipts.
Yeah, and the lesson these sources draw, it's not just for politicians on TV, right?
Not at all.
Whether you're prepping for a work meeting, having a discussion, even just trying to get your head around a tricky subject, this material strongly suggests there's real power in doing the homework.
Backing up what you say with actual evidence.
Yeah.
So maybe the final thought to leave you with, listener, spinning out from these sources, in a world just flooded with instant information, nonstop opinions, how much does that real effort, the digging, the checking, the actual preparation, how much does that shape your own ability to actually influence things, to actually be heard?
Something to think about.